The 40s, it sounds like, I don't know, a terrible indie band name, but in the context of human biology, it's actually the stuff of nightmares, dermatitis,
Yeah.
diarrhea, dementia, and deaths.
It's a terrifying progression. And historically, it was a massive killer.
Oh.
We're talking about a condition called pellagra.
Right. And we know now that pellagra is caused by a total system failure of vitamin B3. But more specifically, it's a failure to produce a single critical molecule, a molecule that acts as the battery for virtually every cell in your body.
Exactly. If that battery hits zero, you get the 4Ds. It's game over. But what we're diving into today is, well, arguably more interesting than the total failure. We're looking at the slow drain.
The fade.
The fade. We're doing a deep dive into NAD plus nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide.
It's a mouthful.
It is. Our source material today is a really comprehensive review by McReynolds and colleagues. It's called Age-Related NAD plus Decline. And the central mystery is this. If this molecule is so essential that losing it literally kills you, why does evolution just let it slowly disappear from our bodies as we get older?
And it does disappear. I mean, that's the whole premise here, right?
It does. And the mission for this deep dive is to figure out how. Is it, leaking out? Did we just stop making it? And the billion-dollar question, if we just talk it back up with a pill, can we actually turn back the clock?
Or are we just pouring water into a bucket with a massive hole in the bottom?
Precisely.
Let's start with the basics, though. We called it a battery, but that feels a little abstract. When we say NAD plus powers the cell, what is it actually doing?
So if you strip away all the jargon, at its core, NAD plus is a courier. Specifically, it moves electrons. You eat food, your body breaks it down, and you need to get that energy into the mitochondria to create ATP, which is, cellular fuel. NAD plus picks up an electron and becomes NADH, drives it over the electron transport chain, drops it off, and turns back into NAD plus to go get more.
So it's a delivery van.
A delivery van that never, ever stops. This is its main role in metabolism, glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, all those things you tried to forget from high school biology. They just grind to a halt without this van moving electrons around.
Okay, so in that scenario, the van drops off the package and goes back to the depot. It's recycled. It doesn't get destroyed.
Correct. It just oscillates back and forth. NAD plus NAD plus NADH, NAD plus NADH.
So if it just cycles, then why do we run out? That was the part of the source material that initially confused me. A catalyst isn't supposed to get used up.
And that is the key distinction the authors make. NAD plus has a day job as a courier, but it also has a kind of night job as a raw material. It acts as what's called a co-substrate.
Which means what?
It means for certain very specific reactions to happen, the molecule itself has to be consumed, broken apart.
Ah.
There are enzymes in your body, specifically sirtuins, PARPs, and CD38, that don't just use NAD plus to move an electron. They physically eat it to fuel their own function.
They treat the delivery van like firewood.
That is a vivid way to put it. But yes, they break the bond between the niacinamide part and the rest of the molecule to release energy for other things, for signaling. So unlike the metabolism side where the van keeps driving, here the van is completely destroyed.
And that creates a supply and demand problem.
A huge pressure. Your cells have to constantly manufacture new NAD plus or frantically recycle the broken parts just to keep the levels up. If the consumption rate outpaces that, the battery drains.
Okay, that's the mechanism. But before we get to why the consumption goes up with age, I want to pressure test this whole premise. We hear it in the longevity space constantly. NAD levels drop as you age. Is the data actually that clean? Because biology is, well, it's rarely a straight line.
You're right to be skeptical. The headline is definitely NAD declines, but the fine print is messy.
Oh, okay.
In rodents, it's pretty undeniable. If you look at a mouse's skeletal muscle, you see drops ranging from 15% all the way up to 65% as they age.
That's a massive range. I mean, that's the difference between feeling a bit tired and total system collapse.
It is. And the liver shows a similar drop, 10 to 50%. But, and this is where it gets really weird, there's a specific strain of female mice they mention in the review.
The C57BL6J bomb tack strain. I love that researchers name these things like my old Wi-Fi passwords.
That's the one. In those specific female mice, their liver NAD plus levels actually increased with age.
So wait, while every other mouse is running out of juice, these specific ones are getting supercharged.
It strongly suggests that genetics play this massive, underappreciated role. It's not some universal law of physics that NAD plus must drop. But, for the vast majority of rodents, it does.
What about us? What about humans? I care a little less about a mouse liver and a lot more about my own skin and brain.
Well, the human data is harder to get. Obviously, we can't just biopsy people's organs whenever we want.
Right.
But the clearest data we have is in the skin. NAD plus levels in the skin of adults are at least 50% lower than in newborns.
Which, honestly, that tracks. You just look at a baby's skin versus an 80-year-old skin. The energy difference is palpable. It isn't just wrinkles, it's the quality of the tissue itself.
Exactly. The brain is where it gets a little more controversial. We have some MRI studies showing a 10 to 25% decline in human brains. But then other studies show no significant difference at all.
Is that comforting or just confusing?
Mostly confusing. But the rodent data on the brain offers a pretty frightening clue. In mice, the brain seems to lose its NAD plus really early. Not in old age, but between weaning and young adulthood.
Wait, so by the time the mouse is basically a teenager, the brain drain has already happened?
Essentially, yes. It implies that different tissues age on completely different timelines. The brain might just set its new normal very early on, whereas muscle declines slowly, over decades.
So my brain might have peaked at 19. That would actually explain a few of my life choices.
I wouldn't go that far, but chemically, yeah, the baseline shifts early. And then there's plasma, your blood. That definitely drops with age, though the levels in blood are tiny compared to what's inside the tissues.
Okay, so the decline is real, even if it varies. Now we get to the detective story. The mission. Why? The source material breaks this down into leaks and broken taps. Let's start with the leaks. Who is stealing the NAD plus trip?
The prime suspect, and this is a major focus of current research, is an enzyme called CD38.
The source called it the greedy enzyme.
Extremely greedy. CD38 consumes NAD plus to create these signaling molecules. But here's the puzzle. Normally, CD38 is mostly found on immune cells. It's not supposed to be highly active in your muscle or your liver cells.
So why does it suddenly spike in aging tissues?
2 words. Inflammaging.
I see that term everywhere now. It sounds like some trendy disease, but it's just life, right?
It's the low-grade chronic inflammation that comes with getting older. As tissues age, they accumulate damage. So immune cells, like macrophages, they invade those tissues to clean up the mess, and those immune cells are just covered in CD38.
So the immune system invades the muscle to help, but it brings this greedy enzyme with it that eats all the battery power.
Precisely. It's a case of friendly fire. The immune cells are there to fix things, but the CD38 they carry just chews through the tissue's entire energy supply.
Wow, talk about a bad house guest.
And it gets worse. You have senescent cells, those zombie cells that stop dividing but refuse to die. They secrete these chemical signals, and these signals tell other cells nearby to ramp up their own CD38 production too.
So it's a contagious energy drain. Inflammation breeds more inflammation, which eats the NAD plus leaks.
Correct. That's the main leak. But there are others. We mentioned PRPs earlier. These are the enzymes that repair our DNA.
Right, and since we accumulate DNA damage as we age, from the sun, from metabolism, from just being alive, the PRPs have to work overtime.
Exactly. Think of PARPs like a contractor fixing holes in your drywall. If you have one little hole, it's cheap. If you have 1,000 holes, the contractor bill, the NAD plus cost, is going to bankrupt you.
That makes perfect sense. Every time I get a sunburn, my PARPs are going nuts and my NAD plus is just tanking.
Effectively, yes. And there's one more leak that's particularly nasty, an enzyme called SARM1.
The executioner.
Yes. SARM1 is involved in what's called axonal degeneration. When a nerve fiber is damaged and needs to die back, SARM1 activates. And it has this incredible NAD activity. I mean, it just chews up NAD plus incredibly fast.
So it's like a self-destruct button for a nerve.
In a way. And if it gets triggered inappropriately in aging nerves, it can rapidly deplete the entire NAD plus pool in your neurons, which could contribute to neurodegeneration.
So we have inflammation, DNA repair, and nerve self-destruct buttons all draining the tank. What about the supply side, the tap? Can't we just make more to keep up?
You'd hope so, but the machinery that makes NAD plus starts to rust a little. The main recycling enzyme is called NAEPT.
And this is the salvage pathway, right? Taking the broken bits and kind of gluing them back together.
Exactly. In young tissue, NAEPT is super efficient. It grabs the NAM, the nicotinamide, and recycles it. But in aging adipose tissue, which is fat, and in skeletal muscle, NAEPT levels drop significantly.
So you've got CD38 and PRPs shredding the molecule at one end and a failing recycling plant at the other.
It's a pincer movement. You're getting crushed from both sides.
And the liver. Can't the liver just make new stuff from scratch?
It tries. That's the de novo pathway making NAD plus from tryptophan. But the source indicates that the key enzyme there, QPRT, also decreases in aged macrophages. So even the backup generator is starting to fail.
There was a third factor the source mentioned, which I found fascinating, because it's not a leak or a broken tap. It's more like a traffic jam.
The redox shift.
Yeah.
This is so critical. Remember the delivery van? Sometimes the van is empty, that's NAD plus safety, and sometimes it's full of electrons, that's NADH. The source suggests that in some aged tissues, the total number of vans is actually fine, but they're all stuck in the full state as NADH.
That they can't unload the package?
Right. If the metabolic machinery, specifically the electron transport chain, starts to slow down with age, NADH just piles up. It can't convert back to NAD plus may.
So if a scientist measures just the NAD plus part, it looks really low. But the molecule hasn't actually left the building. It's just stuck in the wrong form.
Exactly. It's not a shortage of vehicles. It's a gridlock at the delivery dock.
That is a crucial nuance, because just pouring more NAD plus into a system that's jammed might not fix the jam. It might just add more cars to the traffic.
Which brings us to the most mind-bending part of this whole review.
The paradox of quantity.
Yes.
We've established that NAD plus is vital. We've established it drops. We think we know why. But then the authors discuss this experiment with young mice that just, it shouldn't be possible.
This is the part that keeps researchers up at night. They genetically engineered young mice to have 85% less NAD plus in their skeletal muscle.
85% gone. If my phone battery is at 15%, I am panicking. I assume these mice were basically comatose.
That's what you would absolutely expect. You'd think they'd be lethargic, weak, maybe even dead. But they were fine.
What?
They had normal exercise capacity. They ran on the wheel just like the other mice. They survived into early adulthood with almost no battery power.
How? We just spent the last 10 minutes explaining that without this stuff, the engine's all stowed. If I take 85% of the fuel out of a car, it doesn't drive.
It forces us to question our definition of enough. And the experts offer a few theories to explain this. One is compartmentalization.
Meaning?
The cell isn't just one big soup bowl. It has rooms. It has walls. And the mitochondria, the power plants, are like a secure bunker. The study suggests that even if the rest of the cell is depleted, the mitochondria might hoard their own private stash of NAD plus very, very tightly.
So the living room is empty, the kitchen is empty, but the generator in the basement is still running at full capacity.
Exactly. The cytosol, the main fluid of the cell, might be completely drained, but the mitochondria just refuse to share. So the core energy production continues.
That's incredibly selfish of the mitochondria, but I guess lucky for the mouse.
Well, biology is often about survival of the most critical systems. Another theory is heterogeneity.
Which is just a fancy word for unevenness.
Right. When we measure a piece of muscle in a lab, we usually blend it all up and we get an average. But maybe the young mouse has that 15% distributed very evenly across all his cells, which is just enough to keep the lights on everywhere.
Or as in an old mouse, maybe that same average means half the cells are totally fine and the other half are completely dead.
Exactly. If a critical number of cells hits absolute zero, they might die or turn senescent, and that could poison the whole neighborhood. So the distribution might matter a lot more than the total amount.
That is a huge insight. It's not just about the level on the gauge, it's about where the fuel is.
Correct. And it suggests that young tissue is just. It's better at managing scarcity than old tissue is.
So, knowing all this, the leaks, the jams, the weird resilience of young mice, let's talk solutions. This is the so what for the listener. You can walk into any pharmacy or go online right now and buy NR or NMN. The promise is, swallow this, boost NAD, plus yield, live forever. Does the source material back that up at all?
Let's look at the rodent data first, because that's really where all the hype train started. And in mice, the results are genuinely impressive.
I saw they mentioned that NR extended lifespan. That's the holy grail right there.
It did. And not just in young mice. When they started giving NR to mice at 2 years of age, which is roughly equivalent to a 70-year-old human, it extended their remaining lifespan.
That's significant. You don't have to start when you're a baby.
No. And NMN showed improvements in just a whole laundry list of issues. Insulin sensitivity, eye function, bone density.
If I were a mouse, I'd be sold. I would be pre-ordering this stuff by the case.
If you were a mouse, it's a miracle drug. But, and you knew there was a but coming, the transition to humans has been, well, bumpy.
Bumpy how? We aren't just big mice.
We are not just big mice. So first, the good news, safety. Generally, taking these precursors doesn't seem to hurt people, at least in the short term. But efficacy. The review highlights a specific 12-week study of NR in obese, insulin-resistant men.
This seems like the absolute perfect test case. Their metabolism is struggling. They need a boost.
You would think. And the result was nothing.
That's it.
No improvement in insulin sensitivity, no change in mitochondrial function.
Ouch. That is a bucket of cold water on the hype.
It is. But we have to be fair. Other studies have shown some modest benefits. There's some data suggesting improvements in blood pressure and arterial stiffness. There was another study that showed NR decreased those pro-inflammatory cytokines we talked about earlier.
So it might be helping with the inflammaging, even if it's not magically fixing the metabolism.
Potentially. But we have to be honest with ourselves and with you. We do not have long-term safety data in humans, and we definitively do not have proof of lifespan extension in humans. We're trying to hack a very complex system based on a map drawn from mice.
It feels like we're at the Model T stage of this technology. We know the engine needs fuel, but we aren't quite sure which grade of gasoline works best or if the engine is even the real problem.
That's a very fair assessment. And the source material really suggests the future isn't just more fuel. It's about fixing the car.
You mean fixing the leaks?
Exactly. I mean, think about it. If the problem is CD38 eating up all the NAD plus NAO, why would you pump in more NAD plus just to feed the enzyme? The next generation of therapies will probably target CD38 directly.
So a drug that inhibits the greedy enzyme, but only in the inflamed tissue.
Right. You stop the leak, and then the levels can rise naturally. There are actually CD38 inhibitors in development, like a compound called 78C. In mice, it boosted NAD plus and improved muscle function.
That seems much more elegant. It's a scalpel instead of a fire hose.
And likely much safer. Because, and this is something we rarely talk about with supplements, flooding the body with fuel isn't always a good thing.
Before we wrap up, I want to go back to one thing you hinted at, this idea that maybe the decline is there for a reason.
This is probably the most provocative thought in the entire field right now. We assume the decline of NAD plus is a failure, a mistake of evolution. But nature is rarely that slobby.
So why would the body want to drain its own battery? That just seems completely counterintuitive.
Well, think about cancer. Cancer is uncontrolled growth, and it requires massive amounts of NAD plus to build new cells.
Oh, so if you have an old cell, a cell that's full of DNA damage, maybe you don't want it to have a full tank of gas.
Exactly. Draining the NAD plus might be a safety mechanism, a way to put the cell into a low-energy coma, what we call senescence, so it can't divide and become a tumor.
That changes everything.
It really does.
Yeah.
It raises the question, if we blindly force the levels back up to 100% in a damaged older body, are we actually helping the healthy cells, or are we just fueling the very things we're trying to prevent?
We might be overriding the safety switch.
We might be. And that's why that paradox of quantity matters so much. If a young mouse can survive on very low NAD plus Y, maybe the goal isn't just more. Maybe the goal is appropriate.
That is a really sobering thought. We always want the hack, the pill, the unlimited battery. But maybe sometimes the battery is low to keep us safe.
It's a classic reminder that biology is just a web of trade-offs. There is very rarely a free lunch.
Well, on that cheerful note, it's clear that NAD plus is absolutely critical, but the user manual is a lot more complicated than we thought.
It always is.
Yeah.
But that's why we keep diving in.
Absolutely. Stay curious, keep asking questions, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.